What is up, Ravens Flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. Chance and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin, riding solo for this episode as Jimmy is out of the country. So first and foremost, safe travels to my guy, Jimmy Haskell. But just because he's out of town does not mean the Ravens news will stop, and it certainly did not today. Lots of news to go over, and we'll start with the one that I consider the biggest story, and that is, of course, Tavon Young, cornerback for your Ravens, has been released today by the Baltimore Ravens. Not really a surprising move, considering the cap situation, but first and foremost, wanted to say, thank you to Tavon and congratulations to Tavon Young. Not only has he already had a fantastic career, but he went out, I'm sure, the way he would have wanted to, as his Raven career on the field. He played in all 17 games this past season after dealing with a bunch of injury issues. Certainly the 2019 and 2020 season were really tough for him. So I think that the fact that he was able to play in all 17 games this season is a credit to him, as well as the training staff for keeping him healthy and out there. And I mean, what a year for him to choose, for him to be able to prove that he can stay healthy. He does so in a year where we lose Marlon Humphrey, where we lose Marcus Peters and amongst a bunch of other guys, on the back end of that defense. So he was one of the few stabilizing forces in our secondary. And so, shout out to him and credit goes to him. I know he'll be missed in Baltimore. But as far as how it affects the Ravens, I wanted to go over, it's really not that big of a surprise when you look at what his cap hit was expected to be and the fact that the Ravens are relatively tight against the cap and have quite a few holes that they have to fill. And they do have two pretty good corners coming back from injury in Marlon Humphrey and, of course, Marcus Peters, who are expected to return to full strength and be ready by training camp. So, as far as what this does in order to aid the Ravens, it does create $5.85 million in additional cap space, along with some of the other moves they did today, which I'll certainly go over in other videos. But it does give the Ravens a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more of an opportunity to maybe be more active in the upcoming free agent period, as well as possibly in the trade market if there's a guy that they have their eye on that they feel like they could make it work. Now, it does come with some negative as far as the cap. They will incur $3.3 million in dead cap space. So money that's being counted against the cap that's not going towards a player who's on the roster. So $3.3 million of the cap will just be going in dead money to Tavon Young, which is unfortunate for the Ravens. But it's kind of the price of doing business. You want to save the $5.8 million. Well, you got to pay the $3.3 million in dead cap space. But the good thing is it does create and some more flexibility for the Ravens to maybe make additional moves, maybe fill in an edge rusher, maybe address some offensive line issues, which we know were a big topic of conversation. But some other things that it does is it makes things a little bit tight. I mean, I think every Ravens fan felt it's interesting going into last year. The Ravens were, if you would just step back and take a look at every position group, you'd probably say that cornerback was their deepest and most talented of all their positions. When you consider Humphrey, Marcus Peters, they were both healthy. Of course, Anthony Averett, Tavon Young, Jimmy Smith. I mean, they had a bunch of guys. Chris Westry. They had a bunch of guys, and in fact, they even had to get rid of some really talented corners, even with the injuries that happened before the season even started, because they were just that deep. But as the season went on, we saw a bunch of corners go down, and all of a sudden, we were stuck with dealing with street free agents who honestly I had never even heard of. And I talk a lot of Ravens football, and there were times where I was looking on the field going, who is that in the secondary? What's his name? But just so you guys know who's currently left on the roster at the cornerback position, of course, Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters both returning from injury. Then they have Iman Marshall, who hasn't played since 2019 and really has never really established consistent playing time since he was drafted. And then they have the newcomers to the group that were brought in last year as reserves and ended up playing a ton of time. Was Tavon Seymour, Kevin Tolliver, and Robert Jackson, all of which who I think if you ask an average Ravens fan, most have not even heard their name. Now, that's not to necessarily discredit them guys. I'm sure that they're gonna continue to try and make a name for themselves, but just kind of showing that there is an awful lot of opportunity here to improve that roster position. Because right now, Anthony Averett is an unrestricted free agent expected to test the market, and I would be stunned if he was back here, considering the paycheck he's likely in store for on a team that can just simply outbid us, and rightfully so for Anthony Averett. He stepped up, and he deserves an opportunity to start. And not that he wouldn't get that here, because honestly, most of the time you're starting three corners anyway. So he may have gotten an opportunity here, but I don't think that they're going to be able to invest the kind of money to keep him around after they're paying Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey so much money. So right now it's just Humphrey, Peters, Seymour, Marshall, Tolliver, and Jackson. So it's a far cry from what they were last year at this same point in time. So they definitely have they got some opportunity where they could certainly improve the depth and even the quality throughout that entire group. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Ravens do. Now, there's opportunity to create even more space if they can reach a restructure deal with Marlon Humphrey, possibly an extension with Marcus Peters to lower his cap number. There's still things that they could do to increase more cap space, but as it stands right now, they did create the additional $5.8 million with the release of Tavon Young. But they got a lot of work to do, and I would not be shocked at all when you look at this group if they're active at that position in both free agency as well as the draft, which, I know a lot of people aren't pointing to the cornerback position as a spot they want to attack in the draft. Well, as I'm looking at this depth chart right now, they better do something, because what if Marlon or Marcus were to go down, at some point during the season, one of them, this past year was both of them, if both of them go down, then whew, you're really in trouble. But even if just one goes down, you're thrusting a guy into action that, might not be prepared for that type of playing time. So in summary, shout out to Tavon Young. Hope he lands on his feet. I'm sure he will. I'm sure he'll be on a roster as soon as that free agency period opens up, and I'm sure he'll have a ton of suitors trying to get him to come play on their team. So, but let me know what you guys think. I mean, are you disappointed that Tavon Young is no longer a Raven? Were you kind of hoping they'd find a way to squeeze his cap number under that, that limit and find a way to keep him here in Baltimore? Or are you, you kind of happy for a bit of a fresh start in ways, because Tavon has been around the team since 2016 when he was drafted. It's now 2022. Are you open for and hoping for a change at that position? Let me know what all your thoughts below, and we'll talk soon.